Have you ever had a cold sore?
Yeah,
On your
yeah.
lip?
And it appears just around your mouth or
Yes, around your
something.
mouth, usually on one side or the other.
Yeah.
That's herpes, and that's most likely to be HSV1.
Wait. You can probably think you have a cold. You'd probably
Yeah.
assume it's just, those cold sores that appear.
A cold sore is herpes.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. Since the virus is with you for life, it's basically living in your nerves, either in your face or down there, waiting for your immunity to go down so that it can come up again as ulcers.
okay.
So what can make your immunity go down? Maybe you have HIV, maybe you get a flu, maybe you're stressed out.
An estimated 1.1 million Kenyans fall into poverty each year. And that's because of healthcare costs. Would SHA shift UHC change that, or is there more? Or perhaps, what's the difference between a pharmacy with a blue cross and a green cross? What about cancer and the rising incidence amongst the youth? Is it just lifestyle changes, or is there more? Women's health, men's health, your children's health, the economy, this and more awaits you on Season 2 of Kenya's favorite health podcast. My name is Dr. Diana Wangari-Gitau, and welcome to Season 2 of the One Health Lens podcast.
Hi, and welcome to One Health Lens Explained podcast. My name is Cheryl Blessing. I am your host today, and I want us to get into a very interesting conversation. I want us to talk about something that we all probably hear about, but we don't have enough information on it. I'm joined here live on set by an expert, Dr. Kenya. How are you?
Hi Cheryl, I'm good, thanks. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited about today's topic.
Yeah, and it's so lovely to have you on here. So perhaps you can give us an intro. Who are you? What do you do?
Right, so I am a doctor, an obstetrician and gynecologist. That means I take care of women and their sexual and reproductive health. I've been practicing as a medical doctor for over 10 years, and I'm really passionate about teaching women about their health so that they can make better informed decisions.
I love that, especially making better informed decisions, because I think sometimes all of us collectively just go through life and then we learn from the experiences.
Right.
But once you have the information, then it's more, you can,
Intentional.
you're more intentional about the
Proactive.
choices.
Right.
True. So today we're talking about herpes.
Right.
This is one of the STDs that I think we all hear about. We're probably afraid of it, but do we know what herpes is?
Do people really know what herpes is?
Right. Can you tell us what
let's-
is herpes?
Let's get into it, right? And I'm going to use simple terms
Yeah,
just so everyone
perfect.
can understand. Herpes is a viral infection, right? And the actual virus that we're going to be talking about today, because there are many kinds of herpes viruses, we're going to be talking about herpes simplex virus.
Okay.
That's HSV.
Okay.
And the HSVs that affect human beings are HSV1 and HSV2. So funny enough, I was telling you earlier, there's no cure for any viral infection except hepatitis C. So for example, when you get a cold, I'm sure you've been told, don't bother taking antibiotics and all that. Your body will fight it off on its own, right?
Yeah, true.
When you know that HIV has no cure, but we have treatments to manage it. Right?
Yeah.
So most viruses, we haven't yet found a way to treat them and cure them completely, except hepatitis C. And that was a recent development. So that means that once you contract herpes, it stays with you for life, just like HIV and hepatitis B and other viral infections. So what happens is, you'd be surprised to know that about 80% of the world's population has HSV1 or 2, right? It's such a common viral infection. You listening in or watching at home, you probably have herpes, whether or not you know it, okay? So there's HSV1 and 2. HSV1 usually causes symptoms above the waist, and HSV2 usually causes symptoms below the waist. And when I'm talking about symptoms, I'm talking about ulcers. So have you ever had a cold sore
Yeah,
on your
yeah.
lip.
And it appears just around your mouth or
Yes, around
something.
your mouth, usually on one side or the other.
Yeah.
That's herpes, and that's most likely to be HSV1.
Wait. Hold up.
Yeah.
Because I think that information can take so many people aback.
Mm-hmm.
But you've mentioned that 80% of the world's population has herpes.
Yeah.
So how is that? How do you get herpes?
It's a sexually transmitted infection, but not only sexually transmitted, also close contact. So basically, kissing because of the fluids from the mouth, or having intercourse because of the fluids in the genitalia or the anal region, and also close skin contact with an ulcer, because the virus lives in the cells of the skin and the nerves, right?
Okay.
So when you first get the infection by having maybe intercourse with someone or kissing someone, or even a baby while being born to a mother who has an active vaginal infection can get the infection, right? Sometimes after getting the infection, there's no symptom whatsoever. Like you've been infected, but you have no idea.
Yeah.
Right.
So when does it what is it, just come out? Because the way you've said, having sores around your mouth, you can probably think you have a cold. You'd probably assume it's just, those cold sores that appear.
A cold sore is herpes.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. If you have a sore around your mouth at the time when you have a flu, because I'm going to explain why you get these ulcers while you have a flu.
Okay.
But first, let me finish explaining how you actually get the infection. Right?
Yeah.
So say you have intercourse, and you have intercourse with someone who has an infection and they infect you. You can go the rest of your life without knowing you have this infection, and still you can be passing it on to someone, right? Or sometimes after getting the infection, within 1 day to 1 month, you can get symptoms. So you can get ulcers either down there or on your lips.
Yeah.
And after some time, they go away on their own. And then since the virus is with you for life, it's basically living in your nerves, either in your face or down there, waiting for your immunity to go down so that it can come up again as ulcers.
Okay.
So what can make your immunity go down? Maybe you have HIV, maybe you get a flu, maybe you're stressed out, maybe you're being exposed to a lot of sun or cold. Then you get these ulcers coming up again. That's what we call an outbreak, a herpes outbreak. So you can find someone, once in a while you get these cold sores or you get genital ulcers, meaning that this herpes infection is reactivating itself once in a while. And so we advise people to take care of their health, eat well, work out, take supplements if you need to supplement your diet to make sure that your immunity is always on top.
So it appears when your immunity is compromised.
Yes.
That's when the symptoms show up.
Yeah.
But then once your immunity is back on check, then the symptoms go away.
Yeah.
Okay. But now what
inactive.
about someone who has frequent symptoms, who
Right.
they get sores all the time?
Right.
And I don't know if the first type is worse or the second type is worse. So maybe you can explain
That's
that.
such a good question.
Yeah.
So typically, the first time is going to be the worst. You're going to have maybe quite severe sores, really painful, whether it's in your mouth or down there. And it's going to last a bit longer than the future ones. So the future ones tend to last a very short time and to have few ulcers and not so painful. So first time tends to be worse. And you find some people, maybe after your first time, you never get another one, or maybe you just get it once in a while every few years. But then some people who kind of always have a cold sore, right? Or they have a really severe cold sore, or they keep getting these genital ulcers all the time. So there's something we do called suppressive medication. So remember we said there's no cure, but there are treatments that we can give for someone who is having an active infection. There are antiviral medications. So if you find someone who is having a very severe oral herpes outbreak or frequent genital herpes outbreaks, like more than 6 in a year, then we can put you on medication to take throughout for quite a long time to keep this virus suppressed, because for some reason your immunity is not able to keep it suppressed. So you keep getting these infections, which can be quite frustrating, embarrassing, and we don't want you to go through that. So there are medications that can help. You don't have to suffer in silence.
And it's fascinating because when you talk about ulcers,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about ulcers in my tummy. So I can't think about ulcers on my mouth.
Right.
Yeah. How does
okay,
that manifest?
That's interesting. So how it starts usually, first of all, even before you get the ulcer or what we call a lesion on your lips or on your face, maybe around your nose even, or down there, sometimes if you're really attentive, before that starts, you're going to feel some tingling or some burning, like for maybe a couple of days before it actually shows up. Maybe some itching in that area, and then after a couple of days it's going to come up as a little pimple, and then the pimple will burst and some fluid will come out and it will leave like a little crater. That's the ulcer. Yeah. So an ulcer is basically like an indentation after a pimple or a blister has busted.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's fascinating for most people to just get that clarification.
Yeah.
But how do I know if I have herpes? Because you've mentioned that 80% have it. And I think most of us have experienced the cold sores and all that. They appear and you're like, ni tu ya homa. We just brush that off. But how can I get tested and know that this is what I have, and just to be aware and how to manage it and maintain?
Yeah. So once you have a cold sore or a sore down there, but specifically a cold sore, just know that is herpes, okay? If you have a genital ulcer down there, it could be something else, because there are other sexually transmitted infections that also cause similar looking ulcers. So the best thing to do is to see a doctor and be tested. So there are several ways we have of testing. If you have an actual ulcer, we can collect some fluid with a swab from the inside of the ulcer and send it to the lab to get a confirmatory diagnosis that this is herpes. Let's start you on treatment. Remember, the treatment is not curing, it's just shortening the duration of your active illness and reducing the pain, and helping you feel better faster. And we can also do blood tests to see if you have ever had a herpes infection.
But now let's say you have an inactive virus within your body. You have herpes, but it's not active. You've never seen the symptoms. You're not aware. You've never gotten tested. Can you still spread it that way?
Yes, you can. So it's really important for everyone to know their herpes status, right? Because maybe you've never had symptoms, but you could still have it and you can still spread it, because the virus, even though it's not causing you to have any terrible symptoms, is still living in the cells of your nerves, in the genital area and your face. So once in a while, this virus reactivates itself and starts multiplying and rises to the surface of the skin, from which point you can spread it to other people by kissing and by having intercourse if you're not using protection correctly. So even if your body manages to suppress that reactivation so that you don't get symptoms, once in a while you're still actively spreading it. So there's no way of knowing, and that's why we really encourage people to know their status, be honest with their sexual partners, reduce your number of sexual partners, and use protection. And the other thing is, remember, the herpes virus is not only going to be in the genital fluid and in the ulcers themselves, it can also just be in the skin of the inner thighs and the labia. So even protection, even condoms are not protecting you 100%, but if you use correctly, it's better.
Yeah. And I love that you've highlighted that, knowing your status. Because most times when people talk about that, we tend to assume it's just about HIV and knowing if you're positive or not. But you have to have the full spectrum. You have to know about every single STD and get like a full spectrum test.
Exactly.
And you mentioned about mothers transmitting it to children during childbirth. How does that happen? Let's say you have an infection, you're not aware of it, and you're expectant. Can that be transmitted even in an inactive state, or does it have to be active for it to be transmitted?
Usually it's active for it to be transmitted. So say, for example, a mom has an active herpes infection in her genital area, so maybe her vulva and vagina, maybe even her cervix, has some genital herpes ulcers, and she's now delivering and vaginally. So baby is passing through and coming in contact with those ulcers, and so baby can get the infection shortly after birth, right? And in a baby with their very weak and delicate immune systems, it can be quite catastrophic. It can affect their brain, their eyes, and it can even be fatal. So in a mom who has an active herpes infection, around the time of delivery, she will have to have that important conversation with her gynae about, should we proceed with a vaginal delivery, or are we going to do a cesarean section just to protect my baby? Those are conversations that will have to be had, because it's a possibility to infect the baby.
Yeah. That's I think I'm kind of shocked
Yeah.
because I had no idea, and I'm sure so many other listeners did not know that as well.
Yeah.
But you've talked about when your immunity is at its peak, when you're in check, when you're healthy, that's when the virus is inactive.
Yeah.
You've just mentioned some few ways of doing that, but can we do anything more to ensure that our immunity is even stronger, even without just, thinking that I have an active reaction, I have an active virus in my body? How can we ensure that throughout consistently we keep our immunity in check and, just increase the risks over the white blood cell count perhaps in our body, to decrease the risk of having an active reaction?
That's a good way of looking at it, actually. Instead of saying, oh, I have herpes, how do I make sure I never have an outbreak? It's rather, how do I have a really healthy lifestyle so that I'm protecting myself from everything? So basically, eating healthy. I don't think anyone doesn't know what eating healthy is, right? Right now, you need your veggies. You need many colors of veggies and fruits on your plate. As little carbs as possible. High protein is great for most people, right? Obviously, everyone has their own little differences because we're different. And then we know that we need some physical activity. It doesn't mean you have to go and register for a gym and be carrying all the weights in the world, but just some 30 minutes of exercise every day, sweating, or at least 5 days a week. And there are lots of videos on YouTube you can follow as well. Managing stress. I don't like to say avoid stress, because life can be stressful. You can't avoid stress, but when you get stressed, how do you manage it, right? You might need help with a therapist, maybe some coping mechanisms, have a support system, have a community, people you can vent to, people who can guide you. Those are the main things you can do.
And I think that takes care of your physical, mental, and even emotional health.
Exactly.
And let's say I'm in a relationship, I'm just getting into a relationship, I'm getting to know someone. You've talked about being honest. How should I start this conversation? How should I initiate this conversation and tell my partner, I want us to get a full spectrum test. I want us to do the full thing. Because so many people will talk about, let's just test for HIV and leave it at that.
Right.
How do you express that we could have these viruses, but they're inactive, and we need to do it so that we're both aware? How can you express that, especially for the young ladies? Because I know it's a difficult conversation to bring up.
Definitely. And it can be like, oh, you don't trust me, why are you asking for this? We are kind of getting just into the motions of being able to ask for a HIV test, and now here I am saying ask for herpes.
We might have herpes, I don't know you.
So listen, it's you and it's your health, right? So once you get into a new relationship, or even if you're already in a relationship, it's not too late to say, listen, I was listening to this show and I heard about herpes. I heard that there are several STIs that you can have without knowing. I think it's important for both of us to go and get tested, so that we know our status and how to protect each other. Because remember, we're not testing so that now we can discriminate against someone who has an infection, or so that we can dump them or leave them. It's so that we can know how to protect ourselves, right?
That's true.
So the whole point of this thing is know your status, not so that your life can be over and you cannot have intercourse, you can't get married, you can't have children, you're depressed. Know your status so that you can be able to protect your loved ones and continue to have a full life and a full sexual experience safely.
True. And I love that you've said it's about you and your health. So where can we get this test done? Can I just walk into any hospital and ask for them? Where can I get it? And perhaps maybe give us the most affordable places for people who don't have like thousands and thousands to spend.
Yeah, so these tests are available at most hospitals. If you have an active infection, then they're going to be taking a swab and taking it to the lab. But if you don't have an active infection, they're going to take your blood to test for antibodies to that infection, which once you get infected, those antibodies will always be in your blood. You don't have to go to the big hospitals where they're going to charge you thousands. You can just go to your nearest facility and ask them if they offer it. I don't want to send people to any specific places. I'm not being endorsed, but just go and ask. Most places have it.
Yeah. And I love that, because just asking will give you so much information that you probably didn't know about before. So can herpes cause death? Can it lead to death?
It can, especially if you are immune compromised. So if your immune system is not strong and maybe you're an old person or a very young child and it infects your brain, that's when it can become really, really serious and cause death. But that's not very, very common. Yeah, in most people, it's just going to be these genital ulcers and oral ulcers around the mouth that can be quite frustrating.
And what do you mean by infect the brain? Because it's attached to the nervous system, so it can affect your brain.
Yeah, it can affect anything really. It's a virus.
Yeah.
So why it mostly and usually affects just the skin and the ulcers and all that is because our immune system is able to suppress it before it gets anywhere we don't want it.
Yeah.
But if your immune system is not good enough, it can go into your brain and cause what we call encephalitis or meningitis, which can cause death.
Wow, that's very intense. Yeah. And perhaps you can give our listeners a parting shot, one thing that you'd like them to know about herpes, the virus, and its management and all that.
So I want you to know that herpes is a very common infection, and if you have it, you should know that you're not alone, and that if you get frequent outbreaks and oral ulcers or genital ulcers, see a doctor to consider suppressive medication so we can reduce the number of times you're getting these cold sores and all that. And know that it's important to know your status if you don't know whether you have it or not, so that you can protect your future partners and children. And if you have a new baby, try and make sure that people are not coming to your house and kissing your baby and potentially infecting them.
I like that. I really like that, especially us as Africans. Yeah, like the whole family is there, and, you know. But thank you so much. That was very informative. I've loved that. Yeah. And I hope you guys as well have picked up one thing or two from that conversation. It's a very common virus. It can't be totally cured, but you can treat and you can manage it. So know your status, go to the nearest health provider, find out, do you have it, do you not, so that you can make informed decisions in future. And that's it for this episode. This is One Health Lens Explained. We've been here with the amazing Dr. Kenya.
Thank you.
And I am Cheryl Blessing. Thank you so much and have a lovely day.
Bye.